The massive alien warship hung in Earth's orbit like a dark storm cloud. Inside its command center, Admiral Rex of the Galactic Empire paced back and forth, his metallic boots clicking against the polished floor. The floating screens around him showed the same frustrating scene. Another failed attack on Earth's forces. Impossible, he growled, slamming his fist on the control panel. These humans are nothing but primitive apes. How have they held out for 3 years? The Empire had conquered over 10,000 worlds in its march across the galaxy. Most species surrendered after seeing their mighty fleet. Those who fought usually fell within days. But humans, they just wouldn't quit. Every time the Empire launched a major assault, the humans would scatter like insects. They'd hide in their cities, their mountains, their forests. Then they'd strike back when least expected. They'd use simple tricks that somehow worked against advanced technology. A thrown rock would somehow disable a 1,000,000-credit sensor. A crude explosive would destroy a shield that could stop plasma weapons. The War Council's hologram appeared before Rex. 5 alien leaders from different species, each representing a major part of the Empire. "Admiral," the Council leader spoke, their voice deep and tired. "This is becoming embarrassing. 3 years of war against a single planet of primitives." Rex straightened his uniform. "My lords, these humans are different. They don't fight like normal species. They adapt. They learn. Every tactic we use works only once. Then perhaps," another council member said, "we need a different approach, one that speaks to their primitive nature." The council leader nodded. "Yes, these humans still value individual combat, don't they? They have these, sports and contests." "They do," Rex confirmed. "They seem almost obsessed with proving individual worth." "Then let us offer them a challenge they cannot refuse. A contest of champions." The council leader's eyes gleamed. "Our 5 greatest warriors against their best fighter. If we win, Earth surrenders completely. If they win, we leave their solar system forever." Rex's eyes widened. "My lords, surely you don't mean to risk our entire campaign on a single combat." "This campaign is already failing," the council snapped. "And we have the 5 strongest warriors in the galaxy. Each one could destroy an army alone. Together, no single human could possibly survive." The message was sent to Earth's United Defense Council. The humans requested 3 days to consider the offer. In an underground bunker beneath the ruins of an old city, Earth's military leaders gathered around a simple metal table. They had a list of their best fighters projected on the wall. "It's obviously a trap," General Miller said, running a hand through her gray hair. "But it might be our only chance. We're losing this war slowly but surely." "But who do we send?" asked Colonel Banks. "Who could possibly face their 5 best?" The room fell silent as a door opened. A man walked in. Average height, average build, nothing special to look at. But everyone in the room straightened up when they saw him. It was Jack. No fancy title, no special rank. Just Jack. The man who had survived 300 days behind enemy lines. The one who had destroyed an alien base with nothing but a pocket knife and some cleaning supplies. The soldier who had trained other soldiers in ways to kill things that shouldn't even be possible to kill. "I heard you need someone to fight some aliens," he said simply. General Miller looked at the others. They all nodded. "You understand this might be suicide?" she asked Jack. He shrugged. "They're sending their 5 strongest warriors. That means they're sending their 5 most predictable warriors." A small smile crossed his face. "Strong things break easily if you know where to push." The response was sent to the Empire. Earth accepts the challenge. In his worship, Admiral Rex smiled when he received Earth's acceptance. Soon, this annoying little planet would finally learn its place. He had no way of knowing that this decision would change the Empire forever. Jack sat in a simple metal chair, watching the huge screen in front of him. The Empire had sent videos of their 5 champions, probably trying to scare him. He sipped his coffee, studying each warrior with calm eyes. First came the mountain, stepping into view like a walking tank. The alien stood 12 feet tall, its gray skin looking like rough stone. It came from a heavy gravity world, making it incredibly strong in normal gravity. The video showed it crushing a battle tank with its bare hands. Interesting, Jack muttered, making notes on his tablet. They always show the strongest one first. The second warrior appeared in the video, or rather, didn't appear at all. The shadow was almost invisible, its skin changing color to match its surroundings. Only a slight blur in the air showed where it moved. The video showed it killing 10 armed guards before they could even raise their weapons. Jack nodded. They're getting sneakier. Good. The third champion crackled with energy. The storm floated above the ground, electricity dancing around its body. In the video, it disabled an entire military base with a single electromagnetic pulse, then fried all the soldiers in their useless armor. Their weapons are getting more complicated, Jack said to himself. That's what I was hoping for. The fourth warrior, the shield, walked through heavy weapons fire without flinching. Its natural armor deflected everything. Bullets, lasers, plasma, even small nuclear blasts. The video showed it walking straight through a defensive wall, the wall crumbling while the warrior remained unmarked. Jack took another sip of coffee. They're starting to show off now. Finally, the mind appeared. It looked almost fragile compared to the others, with a large head and thin body. But in the video, it stood still while 20 attackers simply fell to the ground, their minds burned out by its psychic powers. General Miller walked into the room as the video ended. "Well?" she asked. "What do you think?" Jack stood up, stretching casually. "They're perfect." Miller frowned. "Perfect. Jack, each one of these things could destroy an army. You'll be facing all 5 at once." "Exactly," Jack said, walking to a map on the wall. "They're the strongest, fastest, toughest, sneakiest, and smartest warriors in the Empire, which means they rely completely on those strengths. And that's good because," Jack smiled slightly, "because they've forgotten something important about Earth, General. Something every human learns growing up here." "What's that?" "On Earth, the strongest doesn't always survive. The most adaptable does." He pointed to the map. "I want this city for the battle." Miller looked at the map. "Old Detroit? It's been abandoned since the first invasion. Half the buildings are falling apart." "Perfect," Jack said again. "I'll need 3 days to prepare it. And I need some supplies. Whatever you need. Weapons, armor, energy shields." Jack shook his head. "Simple stuff. Construction tools, some electronics, chemical supplies you can buy at any store, and my old combat suit. The basic one, not the fancy new ones." Miller stared at him. "That's all. Against these 5. "Trust me," Jack said, already making a list. "The Empire chose their champions carefully. 5 incredible warriors, each with an amazing power." He looked up at Miller. "But they made a big mistake." "What mistake?" "They picked specialists, warriors who have always been the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest, warriors who have never needed to be anything else." Jack's eyes got a hard look. Warriors who have never had to adapt. In space, the 5 champions watched their own videos, studying their past victories. They felt confident, superior, ready to crush this single human who dared to face them. They didn't notice that in each video, they won their battles the same way, using the same moves, falling into the same patterns. They didn't realize they were showing their weaknesses to someone who had spent his entire life learning how to exploit exactly that kind of weakness. The Empire was about to learn a hard lesson about humans. True strength isn't about being the most powerful. It's about being able to change. The abandoned city stood silent under the gray sky. Empty buildings watched like hollow-eyed giants as Jack walked through the streets, pushing a simple cart full of hardware store supplies. Behind him, General Miller followed with 2 armed guards. "You're sure you don't want a team to help you prepare?" Miller asked, stepping over a broken piece of concrete. Jack shook his head. "More people means more traces. More traces means they might figure out what I'm planning." He stopped at a crossroads, looking up at the tall buildings. "Besides, I work better alone." Miller watched as Jack checked something on his tablet. "The Empire's warriors arrived in orbit this morning. They're training together, practicing group tactics." She paused. "They're very good at it." "Of course they are," Jack said, marking something on his map. "They're the best at everything they do. That's the problem." "You've lost me." Jack turned to face her. "When was the last time you think any of them failed at something? When was the last time the mountain couldn't just smash through a problem? When did the shield last have to dodge because their armor wasn't enough?" Understanding began to show in Miller's eyes. "They don't know how to handle failure." "Exactly." Jack started walking again. "Success is a terrible teacher. These warriors have always won because they're the best. They've never had to think of another way." He stopped at an old department store, its windows long broken. "This is perfect. You should go now, General. The less you know about what I'm doing, the better." Miller nodded slowly. "You have 3 days before the battle. Do you really think that's enough time?" Jack smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "More than enough. They're expecting me to set up some high-tech defense system or arrange for hidden weapons." He patted his cart of simple supplies. "They'll be looking so hard for complicated traps that they won't see the simple ones." On their ship, the Empire's warriors were indeed training. The Mountain and the Shield practiced coordinated attacks. The Storm and the Shadow worked on ambush tactics. The Mind linked their thoughts, making them fight as one perfect unit. Admiral Rex watched them with pride. "Magnificent, aren't they?" he said to his second-in-command. "The human won't last 5 minutes against them." "Sir," his officer said carefully, "we're detecting some strange energy readings from the city." "The humans' preparations?" Rex asked. "No, sir. That's what's strange. We're picking up nothing unusual. No weapon signatures, no power sources, no shield generators, just some basic electrical activity." Rex frowned. "Show me the human." The screen lit up with thermal imaging of the city. They watched Jack moving through buildings, carrying supplies, setting up what looked like simple construction equipment. "What is he doing?" Rex wondered aloud. "Should we stop him?" the officer asked. "We could say he's violating the preparation rules." Rex shook his head. "No. Let him play with his primitive tools. Our warriors can handle anything he builds with such basic materials." Back in the city, Jack worked steadily through the first night. He set up pulley systems in some buildings, rewired old electrical systems in others, mixed common chemicals in precise amounts. Every tool, every wire, every chemical was something you could buy at any store on Earth. In his combat suit, the old basic model he requested, he moved like a shadow through the urban maze. Each step was measured, each location chosen with care. He wasn't preparing a battlefield. He was preparing a hunt. At dawn, he stood on a rooftop, watching the sunrise. 1 day down, 2 to go. He took out his tablet and reviewed the videos of the Empire's warriors again. Their strengths, their patterns, their habits. General Miller's voice came through his radio. "How's it going?" Jack looked at his work, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly what to look for. "Pretty good. By the way, could you do me a favor?" "What do you need?" "Find me some old manhole covers. And some kitchen matches. Regular ones, not the waterproof kind." There was a long pause. "Kitchen matches. Trust me," Jack said, watching a security camera feed of the Empire's warriors training. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones." The warriors continued their perfect, coordinated practice, never realizing they were training to fight the wrong kind of battle. Dawn broke over the abandoned city. Mist rolled through the empty streets, wrapping around broken buildings like ghostly fingers. High above, the Empire's ship cast a shadow over half the arena. Admiral Rex stood at his command center, watching through high-tech sensors as his 5 champions teleported down to their starting position. They appeared in perfect formation at the edge of the city. "Begin scanning for the humans' defenses," Rex ordered. His officers worked at their stations, running every scan they knew. After several minutes, one spoke up. "Sir, we're not finding anything." "What do you mean?" "No energy shields, no weapon emplacements, no defense systems." The officer looked confused. "Just some basic electrical circuits and what looks like construction work." Rex frowned. The human had 3 days to prepare, and that's all he did. Down in the city, the mountain led the group forward, its huge form casting long shadows in the morning light. The shield walked close behind, while the storm floated above them. The shadow had already turned nearly invisible, scouting ahead. The mind linked their thoughts together, making them move as one perfect unit. "This is almost disappointing," the mountain rumbled. "I expected more of a challenge." The mind spoke in their shared thoughts. "Stay alert. Humans are known for being tricky." They passed an old gas station, its rusted signs creaking in the wind. The shadow moved ahead, its nearly invisible form checking for threats. It reported back. Nothing. No movement. No weapons. No. A soft click interrupted them. The shadow looked down. Its foot had caught a thin wire, almost invisible against the concrete. Before it could move, a series of simple pulleys activated. A manhole cover, hanging from old rope, swung down from a building like a giant pendulum. The shadow tried to dodge, but in the wrong direction, exactly as Jack had planned. The heavy metal disc hit the warrior with tremendous force, sending it flying into a wall rigged with simple chemical pouches. The impact burst the pouches. "It's a trap," the mind warned, but too late. The mixed chemicals created a rapidly hardening foam, trapping the shadow before it could escape. The mountain roared and stepped forward to help, only to have the ground collapse under its feet. The warrior's great weight, usually an advantage, now worked against it as carefully weakened support beams gave way, dropping it into an old subway tunnel. "Up," the shield commanded. "We need higher ground." The storm lifted them all with its electromagnetic powers, carrying them to a rooftop. They landed in what seemed like a safe position. In his hidden observation post, Jack watched through simple binoculars. He pressed a button on an old remote control he built from spare parts. Suddenly, every metal object on the roof, old pipes, wire coils, scattered tools, shot toward the storm like bullets. The warrior's electromagnetic field, which could normally deflect such things, instead attracted them. Jack had charged them with precisely the opposite polarity. The storm, tangled in metal, lost control of its powers. The shield tried to protect everyone but could only cover one direction. They scattered, their perfect formation broken. From his command ship, Rex watched in growing horror. Impossible. They're being defeated by scrap metal and ropes. His officer studied the readings. "Sir, the human. He's using our warrior's strengths against them." The shadow's stealth made it overconfident. The mountain's weight became a weakness. The storm's powers worked in reverse. "But how?" Rex demanded. "Where are the advanced weapons? The high-tech defenses?" Down in the city, Jack moved silently through the buildings he'd spent 3 days studying. He'd mapped every corner, every shadow, every loose brick. While the Empire's warriors had practiced fighting together, he'd learned to use their battlefield against them. He keyed his radio once. Phase 1 complete. General Miller's voice came back. "Already?" That was faster than expected. "They're strong," Jack replied, checking his simple tools. "They're fast. They're powerful. But they only know how to fight one way." He watched the mind trying to reorganize the remaining warriors. "Let's see how they handle Phase 2. The warriors regrouped, now moving more cautiously. But they still didn't understand. They were looking for advanced technology, for complex weapons. They should have been looking for kitchen matches and string. The mind floated in the center of a defensive circle, trying to locate Jack's thoughts. The shield stood guard while the storm, now more cautious, generated a weak electromagnetic field to detect any metal threats. "This is wrong," the mind said. "I can't sense the human's thoughts clearly. They're everywhere." Jack watched from his hidden position, smiling slightly. Before the battle, he placed dozens of small music players around the city, each playing recordings of his own thoughts. Simple thoughts, boring thoughts, thousands of them overlapping. The kind of mental noise that would drive a telepath crazy. "Find him," the storm demanded, its energy crackling with frustration. The mind winced. "I'm trying. But wait." Its large eyes widened. "Above us." They looked up just as Jack dropped a simple net made of rubber cables, completely invisible to the storm's electromagnetic senses. The shield moved to protect everyone, but Jack had counted on that. The net wasn't the real attack. As the shield moved, they stepped on what looked like ordinary ground. But Jack had spent hours laying down special tiles made from bathroom cleaner and aluminum foil. When crushed, they created a chemical reaction that turned the ground into soap-slick mud. The shield, for the first time in their life, lost their footing. They crashed into the storm, disrupting the warriors' electrical field. Both went down hard. The mind tried to blast Jack with psychic energy, but he was already gone, disappearing into a building. They could hear his thoughts coming from everywhere, 1,000 different directions, driving the mind's senses crazy. "Stop," the mind shouted. "This isn't right. We're the Empire's greatest warriors. We can't be defeated by cleaning supplies." In his command ship, Admiral Rex watched in growing panic. "This is impossible. Our warriors are being beaten by toys and tricks." His officer studied the battle recordings. "Sir, I think I understand what the human is doing. Look at the shield. They've never had to worry about their footing before. Their armor always protected them. And the storm never learned to fight without their powers because they never needed to. But they're still stronger than him, more powerful, better in every way." "Are they?" the officer asked quietly. "They only know how to fight one way. The human. He keeps changing. Every attack is different. Every trap is unique." Back in the city, Jack led his opponents on a chase through the maze of buildings. He'd memorized every turn, every doorway, every loose board. The warriors followed, growing more frustrated with each step. The mind tried again to read his thoughts, pushing harder this time. Jack let them in, right into memories of Earth's worst horrors. Wars, disasters, plagues. The kind of thoughts that would overwhelm someone who'd never faced real failure or loss. The mind screamed, their psychic defenses shattered by the flood of dark emotions. They collapsed, unconscious. No more games. The storm roared, unleashing their full power. Lightning filled the street, destroying everything it touched. Jack ducked into a doorway. He'd been waiting for this. The storm's attack hit the power lines he'd carefully repositioned, following the path he created with simple copper wire. The electricity circled back, trapped in the loop he'd designed. The storm realized too late what was happening. Their own power, amplified and reflected, overwhelmed them. They fell, smoke rising from their body. The shield stood alone now, their perfect armor still unscratched. "Face me," they demanded. "Face me like a warrior." Jack's voice echoed from somewhere in the ruins. "Why would I do that? This isn't about being the strongest warrior." A pause. "It's about being the best survivor." The shield spun around, trying to locate him. They didn't notice they were standing exactly where Jack wanted them. He pressed another remote button. This time, nothing seemed to happen. The shield laughed. "Your trap failed." "Did it?" Jack asked. That's when the shield realized they were standing on a manhole cover, one that was now magnetically locked to their armor. And beneath it, The ground was beginning to crumble. Sometimes, Jack thought as he watched, the strongest armor just makes you sink faster. The mountain pulled itself out of the subway tunnel, concrete dust covering its gray skin. It had taken hours to find a way back up, following the sound of battle. Now looking at its fallen companions, rage filled its giant frame. The shadow lay trapped in hardened foam, unable to move. The mind was curled up in a ball, whimpering from psychic shock. The storm's unconscious body still sparked with her own reflected power. And the shield. The shield had vanished into a deep hole, their own armor too heavy to climb out. Human. The mountain's roar shook the buildings. Face me. In his command ship, Admiral Rex gripped his chair tightly. At least the mountain is still fighting. Surely one human can't defeat our strongest warrior. His officer wasn't so sure. Sir, every trap so far has used the warrior's own strengths against them, and the mountain is the strongest of all. Down in the city, Jack watched the mountain through his binoculars. The alien warrior was destroying everything in sight, smashing through walls, throwing cars, trying to force Jack into the open. Perfect, Jack whispered. He keyed his radio. General Miller. Here, you're really going to try it. Trust me. Jack checked his simple supplies one last time. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, Miller finished. Good luck. The mountain reached the city center, a large open area surrounded by tall buildings. Are you a Kyogo human? Come outie and fight. Jack's voice echoed from everywhere at once, bouncing off buildings through carefully placed pipes. Why are you shouting? I'm right here. He stepped out into the open, looking tiny compared to the 12-foot alien warrior. The mountain laughed, the sound like rolling boulders. Finally, no more tricks, no more traps. Just you and me, if that's what you want. Jack shrugged. But first, a question. How's your balance? What? Your balance. See, I've been studying your species. You come from a heavy gravity world. Makes you incredibly strong here. Jack started walking in a circle around the mountain. But there's a problem with that. The mountain turned to follow him, growling. There is no problem. I am the strongest warrior in the Empire. Exactly. You're strong. But your brain, your reflexes, they're still calibrated for your home world's gravity. Jack kept moving, making the mountain turn again and again. Must be like being underwater all the time. Everything's too light, too easy to move. Enough talk. The mountain charged forward, each step cracking the concrete. Jack didn't move. The mountain's huge fist swung down and hit nothing but air. Jack had shifted just slightly, letting the warrior's own momentum carry them forward. See, too much power, not enough control. Jack moved again as another punch missed. You're strong enough to crush mountains, but you've never had to be precise. The mountain attacked again and again, each miss making them angrier. Jack kept talking, kept moving, kept making the warrior turn around and around. You know what else I learned about your species? Jack ducked under another wild swing. Your inner ear fluid is denser than ours. Helps you handle the heavy gravity at home. The mountain suddenly stumbled, shaking its huge head. All that turning, all that spinning to follow Jack. But here, Jack stepped back. Here it makes you very, very easy to dizzy. The mountain tried to step forward and fell to one knee, the world spinning around them. They'd reached out to grab a lamppost for support. That was exactly what Jack had wanted. He pressed his last remote button. The lamppost, which he carefully wrapped with heating coils from old electric blankets, suddenly turned red-hot. The mountain roared in pain and let go, directly onto the pile of match heads Jack had scattered earlier. The friction of their heavy foot coming down ignited them all at once. The flash of phosphorus was blinding. The mountain staggered back, straight toward the building Jack had prepared. He'd spent hours weakening one wall, replacing support beams with sugar glass copies that looked identical but would shatter under pressure. The mountain crashed through, and the entire structure came down on top of them. When the dust settled, the mountain lay trapped under tons of rubble, finally defeated by their own strength. Jack keyed his radio one last time. Phase 3 complete. All targets down. Admiral Rex's voice shook. Impossible. Impossible. Jack looked up at the Empire's ship and smiled. No, just human. The sun was setting over the battlefield as the Empire's medical ships descended to collect their fallen warriors. Jack sat on a broken wall, cleaning his old combat knife, the one weapon he'd never needed to use. Admiral Rex himself transported down to the surface, surrounded by guards. He walked through the aftermath of the battle, looking at each defeated champion with disbelief. The shadow still trapped in hardened foam. The storm, their circuits fried by their own power. The mind, recovering from psychic shock. The shield, pulled from their pit, but unable to stand under their armor's weight. And the mountain finally dug out from the ruins, barely conscious. I don't understand, Rex said as he approached Jack. You defeated our greatest warriors with cleaning supplies and string. Jack stood up slowly, putting his knife away. You still don't get it, do you? This wasn't a battle of strength against strength. Then what was it? A lesson. Jack gestured at the fallen warriors. Your champions were the best at what they did, the strongest, the fastest, the smartest. But that was all they were. General Miller arrived with a small team, walking confidently toward the Empire's group. What our friend here means, she said, is that you made a classic mistake. You chose specialists. Rex frowned. Of course we did. Each one was perfect at their role. Exactly, Jack said. Perfect. Unbeatable. Until they faced something they weren't perfect at. Your shadow never learned to wash for simple traps because they never needed to. Your storm never considered their powers could be turned against them. Your shield's armor became a prison. He walked over to the mountain, who was sitting up now, still dazed. And you, Jack said quietly. You're so strong you never had to learn finesse. Never had to think about leverage or balance or momentum. But you, Rex said slowly, you used everything. Turned our strengths into weaknesses. Because that's what humans do. Miller stepped forward. We're not the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest. We can't be perfect at anything, so we learn to be good at everything. Jack nodded. On Earth, pure strength doesn't guarantee survival. Neither does speed or armor or any single advantage. The only thing that keeps us alive is our ability to adapt. The mind, now recovered enough to speak, looked up at Jack. Your thoughts during the battle. So much pain, so much failure, so much learning. That's human history, Jack said. We fail. We fall. We get back up and try something new. Your warriors never learned that lesson because they never needed to fail. Rex stared at the human for a long moment. Finally, he straightened up and pressed a button on his uniform. A hologram of the War Council appeared. The human has won, Rex announced. Fairly and completely. The council leader looked at the scene of destruction. Destruction caused by simple tools and clever tricks. So it seems. Very well. As agreed, the Empire will withdraw from Earth's solar system. Wait, Jack said. Everyone turned to look at him. Before you go, learn from this. Learn what? The council leader asked. That true strength isn't about being unbeatable. It's about being able to change, to adapt, to turn weakness into strength. Jack smiled slightly. Maybe it's time the Empire learned how to fail, so you can learn how to become better. The council was silent for a long moment. Then the leader nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right. This defeat has taught us more than 1,000 victories. As the Empire's forces prepared to leave, Rex turned to Jack one last time. You could have killed them. All of them. Why didn't you? Because this wasn't about killing, Jack said. It was about teaching. About showing that sometimes the strongest warrior isn't the one who never falls. He looked at the Empire's champions, now being helped to their feet. It's the one who learns how to get back up. The Empire withdrew that day, leaving Earth in peace. But they left with more than a defeat. They left with a lesson about true strength, taught by a single human with some string, some matches, and the most powerful weapon of all, the ability to adapt.